MRO is an acronym that stands for Maintenance Repair Operations, or as we've seen in the aviation industry, stands for Maintenance, Repair and Overhaul. But the question today really is, can we actually carry out MRO processes in SAP S/4HANA Public Cloud? Well, if you want to find out the answer to that question, then stick around. Welcome back to the channel. As I said in the introduction, today's topic is going to be about MRO, Maintenance Repair Operations. Now, this is a topic that I hadn't come across until very recently, when first a colleague of mine, Refurbished, came to me and we kind of brainstormed how this process could work in SAP S/4HANA Cloud, as there isn't really a scope item that covers that particular scenario. It doesn't mean that you cannot do that in S/4HANA Public Cloud, quite on the contrary. And then also, more recently, I have a customer that came with that very specific requirement. And we are going to be looking at how we can take an equipment that is actually currently performing in our production facility, or maybe an item that we had sold to a customer at some point, but is now found to be performing suboptimally, or is broken, damaged, and requires to be repaired or refurbished, which is a more cost-effective route than simply scrapping that part and purchasing a brand new one. So this is really the topic that we are going to be covering in today's recording. To kind of set the scene, we are going to start off with receiving a purchase order of a part. Then we will fast track that process where we will assume that it has been operating out there on the field for quite some time, or maybe we have then subsequently also sold this part to a customer who found it to be defective or maybe broken at some point. But the net result is that we will then fast track to where we have this part back in stock. We will assess the fact that it is indeed broken, and from that point onwards trigger the subcontracting MRO process. What does that mean? Well, it means that we're going to take this part that is currently broken, send it off to a supplier who is going to breathe new life into it, and then send it back to us. However, there are certain aspects within this process that we want to make sure are going to be ticked off. Number one, I don't want to have a new material number. Number two, I don't want to have a new serial number. This is a part that has been in operation, for example, in my operation for quite some time. I've got a large history on it of maintenance operations that have been carried out on it already, and I don't want to lose sight of that. We also want to not lose track of the valuation type of that particular part, meaning that it's no longer a new part, but it's not a broken part either. So I need to be able to understand that this part is now in a state of, shall we say, repaired or refurbished, and it also has a different value that I need to carry in my books that is different than if that part was new or broken. Now, if you look at the various forums that are available, you'll see that different customers have different requirements when we talk about MRO. Some want serial numbers, some don't, some want batch numbers, some don't, some want to have different valuation types, some only want 2, 3, 4 different valuation types, and today obviously we cannot cater to all of the scenarios. So some of the key aspects of the scenario that we will have in today as recording is that the part that we are looking at is going to be serialized, and we will also have a split valuation, meaning that we recognize and accept the fact that a part can be valuated differently depending on whether it's a brand new part, whether it's a broken part, or whether it is a refurbished part. So without further ado, we'll just jump into the system. As usual, we'll start off by carrying out the process from a functional point of view, and then we'll finish off the recording by showing the key configuration points that need to be looked at if you want to implement this particular process in your system. All right, so just to start off this process, and so that we have the full visibility of how the valuation type of our serialized part is going to evolve over time, we are going to start off the process by creating a purchase order to receive a brand new part into our stock. Now, before we do that, I just want to have a quick look at the stock overview so that we can see how it is going to progress as the process unfolds. So let's go ahead and look at the stock of the part MRO 127, which is what we're going to be using in this process. We can see that we have a total of 2 units in stock, and they're all in the storage location 171A. And we can also see that we have one in the valuation type damaged and one in the valuation type refurb. Now, this might be misleading in the sense that it is the same icon that I use for batches, but this part is not managed in batches. So I just really want to call it out. So let's go ahead and create a purchase order for a brand new part. So I have fast-tracked the creation of a purchase order, and this is not the MRO related purchase order. Remember, this is just the brand new part that we are going to be purchasing and receiving into our warehouse. So there's nothing really extraordinary about this particular purchase order, other than maybe, so obviously it's got the part number, the price, what have we got? Yep, nothing extraordinary. Maybe have a quick look at the delivery tab, and what we have indicated here is the valuation type of new. This is not necessarily something that you want the warehouse personnel to have to worry about. So it's going to get copied across automatically when they do the goods receipt into the warehouse. I have not indicated any serial numbers at this point, because this is something that the supplier is potentially going to give me when we do the goods receipt, so it'll be entered at that point. So let's go ahead and save this purchase order. Now the next thing that we want to do is we want to post the receipt of that purchase order. So to fast track the process, I've already entered the purchase order number, and all of the details of the purchase order have been copied across. The things to call out really is the valuation type, which is how I'm going to track and value this part once it hits my inventory. Note that I have not indicated any batch number, because again, this part is not managed by batch. So it's going to be receipted into my storage location, and the only thing that I really need to do now is enter the serial number for this part. So I'm just going to call it MRO 127-S400 Cloud Knowledge Snippet, and we are going to give this part the serial number 500. So it's important to make a note of it, because that's the one that we are going to be tracking and utilizing throughout this particular process. So let's go ahead and do an item OK. Let's do a quick check. Everything is fine, so let's go ahead and post it. So we have a material document that has been generated. We can also look at the material document just to have a feel for the accounting documents and entries that were generated when we did the goods receipt. So let's go to the financial documents, and we can see that the inventory value has increased by $680 US, which was the purchase price that we had indicated in the purchase order. Now this part, this valuation type of new, is evaluated according to a moving average price, so the purchase order price was copied as the basis for valuating the inventory. So before we move on, let's go back to the stock overview, and now that we have receipted this part into stock with a valuation type of new, we should now have, there we go, we now have 3 items in stock, and we have 3 in the storage location, and we have this new valuation type new that has appeared with that one that we have just receipted. So now, for the purpose of the scenario, we're going to assume that this part has been installed into an equipment in my factory, has been working for some time, or possibly it's a part that we sold to a customer, but fast track forward some time, the part is now no longer performing optimally, or is potentially in a broken or damaged state and needs to be repaired. So fast track the process, the part has now made its way back into our inventory. It's in a state of the same valuation type of new, and what we want to do is, we've done a quick assessment, we've decided that it is indeed broken. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to move that part to a new valuation type to identify it as being a damaged part. So I'm going to go ahead and post a transfer movement for that to happen. So we're doing a transfer posting, a 309, which is from a material to a material, and we are going to be moving from one material to that very same material, but the only thing that we are going to change is the valuation type. So the product that I'm moving is the MRO 127, the plant is 1710, and the location is 171A. Now the system should detect that this is a split-valuated material, so it's going to ask me for the valuation type. And the part is currently sitting in the new valuation type. That's what I've receipted back into my stock. I'm going to be moving a quantity of 1. And the destination is going to be that same material, MRO 127. And the system should also ask me for what valuation type do you want to move this to if it changes, and it does in our case. So we are moving it to damaged. And obviously the last thing that we want to double check or add in terms of information is the serial number. So let's go ahead. Let's go and find the serial number. Now there is only one serial numbered MRO 127 sitting in the valuation type new, so it's been copied automatically, but I could have selected one amongst many if there were several in that valuation type of new. Okay, so at this point things look okay. I'm just going to do a quick check. Everything is okay, so we are going to post. Again, a material document has been generated, so let's have a quick look at that document as well. And if we look at the financial documents, the accounting document, we should see that we've in effect written off that value, right? Because this particular valuation type of damaged is one that is standard price managed, and the price of it is 0. So the entire value of the item that was new valuated, the entire value has been written off against this particular account. So it's a loss inventory transfer value. And as I said earlier on, customers could have different requirements. So this is also something that you might need to look at in your implementation. So at this point, what we can also do is digress and look at the serial number history associated with that particular serial number. So let's go ahead and click on Display Material Serial Number. The material is MRO 127. We're going to look at the existing serial number list, and this is the one that we have been looking at just now, which is part 500, serial number 500. So I'm going to pick this one. And because this is a serialized part, and in the serial number profile, we've also indicated that we wanted to create an equipment record. There is also an equipment record that has been created for this particular serial number part, which is indicated right there. What we can do is we can track the history, because as I said, one of the reasons for why we're doing all of this is because we want to keep track of that entire history that we'll have on that material number. And here we have the entire history of it. So we had the goods receipt, and here we have the transfer posting, debit and credit that was done when we transferred from the new valuation type to the damaged valuation type. Okay, so that's just a quick look on the serial number / equipment record associated to that serial number. So now that we have our part correctly in stock, identified as being damaged, the next thing that we want to do is we obviously want to send this part out to a supplier to be refurbished and come back to us in a refurbished state. So let's go ahead and create that purchase order as well. All right, now because creating the purchase order and showing it to you could be as interesting as watching paint dry, I've already created the purchase order. But let's walk through the really important settings that need to be set for this MRO subcontracting order to be able to unfold. So first of all, we have indicated in the item category L, which represents this purchase order being a subcontracting purchase order. Now, the fact that we have indicated it's a subcontracting purchase order means, oops, I've lost the item category. Let me put it back in again. So indicating that it's a subcontracting purchase order means that we are going to be sending out goods to the supplier, and we're going to be expecting something back in return. And obviously the fact that we've indicated that this is a subcontracting purchase order means that we're going to need to indicate a bill of material in that purchase order, so the system understands what is it that we're going to be sending out to the supplier and what is it that we are obviously getting back, which is indicated here. Now this is a same part that we're sending out and same part that we're receiving, so it's what SAP calls a recursiveness. But anyway, let's move on. So we've got subcontracting, the material, the item. We've indicated this time a price of 450, so that's going to be the value that the supplier is going to add in, breathing some new life into my particular product. And the other setting here that is really important is the type of subcontracting. So let's look at the values that we have selected and what else we could have chosen. So what we're really interested here in is these two. So we have refurbishment with unchanged material number, which is the one that we have chosen. So I'm going to be sending out MRO 127 and expecting MRO 127 to be coming back as well. I could also have opted for number 2, where I do send out MRO 127 but get something else back. In our case, we've gone with 1 because, as I said earlier on, we have this entire history that we want to keep for that material and serial number. So let's select or keep excuse me, 1 selected. Now, the fact that this is subcontracting and we've also opted for this 1 setting, so same part going and same part coming back, has automatically, if you like, exploded or created the bill of material of my purchase order. And here the system has correctly indicated that we are therefore sending out MRO 127. And what is noteworthy is the batch. So if you recall, that part that was brand new that we then moved into the damaged valuation type is what we're going to be sending out. Now also note that we're not managing this part in batches, but we have indicated the batch of damaged for the part that we are going to be sending out. So what else is of interest here? Let's go to the delivery. So we have delivery, the valuation type, which is refurb, which is the valuation type that this part is going to be coming back to me once the supplier sends it back. And lastly, what we also need to indicate in the purchase order is the serial number. And the serial number is obviously the one that is currently sitting in that damaged stock, which is that part 500, which is the one that we've been using since the start of this process. Okay, let's quickly check as well. Maybe also something that is noteworthy, we've indicated a supplier here, but when we perform the next step in this process, so when we send out the goods to the supplier, we are going to be leveraging an outbound delivery because we want to manage the logistical process of sending the parts out. So what you should know is that when you create the outbound delivery, the system is going to be looking for sales relevant information, the shipping point, to determine the shipping point of the outbound delivery. So make sure that when you create your supplier master, you also create for it a customer view. Otherwise, you will not be able to determine a shipping point. Okay, so I think that at this point, the purchase order is looking fine. So I'm just going to say, go ahead and save it. So as I said, the next step is that we want to be able to send the goods out to the supplier. And in order to do that, we are going to be leveraging the subcontracting application that exists in the system to generate that delivery and then also subsequently post the goods issue to reflect the fact that we've issued the goods out from our warehouse to the supplier. So let's go ahead and look at the app, which is this one that we're going to be using. So we're providing the component MRO 127. I don't remember the purchase order number or the supplier, but it should be fairly evident when it comes up. So I think that this is it. Yep, this is our supplier. Let's open up this little box here. So it's telling us that there is a shortage at the supplier, which stands to reason. Here we find our purchase order number. We also have the valuation type / batch, which is what we entered in the purchase order that is coming across here. So let's pick this line, and what we'll do is we'll say, go ahead and create the delivery. So we have a pop-up coming up. Everything looks okay. We've got the green status. So from a system point of view, everything is okay. We also see the movement type that will happen when we post the goods movement, which will be a movement 541. So from our stock to the supplier stock. So let's go ahead and create a document. And the document here being the outbound delivery, which is created. And we have our delivery that has now been appended to the list, to the document flow. So let's go into the delivery, complete the information in it, and we'll post the goods issue from there as well. So let's go into the details of that outbound delivery. I could also have used the outbound delivery application. So let's do a quick double check. We want to indicate that we have indeed picked one. So maybe if I switch to change first, that will help. There we go. So we have put a pick quantity of 1. We also want to double check that the serial number, if you recall, that we had indicated in the purchase order, has correctly propagated through, and indeed it has. So at this point, everything is okay. We have the valuation type damage, which is what we'll be removing out of our stock to go to the supplier. So I'm fairly happy with all the information that we've got here, and what we'll do is we'll post the goods issue. Perfect. So let's do a refresh as well. We have the indicator of green, meaning that the goods are in the supplier stock. They may not physically be there, but at least they've gone out of my warehouse. So the supplier at this point, he's doing all of the work, he's doing the refurbishment, getting it done. And we are now going to, again, fast track the process where the supplier has completed the work that he needed to do on this particular item, and it has now shown back at my doorstep, ready to be goods receipted back into my warehouse. So again, and before we do that, let's do a quick check on the stock overview, just so that we can track the changes that will happen. So we can see that at this point we have the new item that we transferred into the damage valuation type that has left my warehouse, but is in the warehouse or in the stock of the supplier. And when we receive the purchase order, we should have that stock disappear because the damaged part obviously will have been consumed, and we'll have a new valuation type with a quantity of 1 in our warehouse. So let's go ahead and post the goods movement for the receipt of the purchase order. Okay, so I've indicated all of the details or entered the purchase order, and all the details have been copied into the goods receipt screen. Let's open this up. So what we're going to be seeing here is on one hand, the consumption. So that's going to be a 543 movement type from the supplier stock out of it. And the first line here, which is going to be the goods receipt back into my warehouse of that refurbished item. So let's do a quick check on the information that we've got for that. So we are receiving the item in the valuation type of refurb, because it is now going to be a refurbished part. So in that specific valuation type, the quantity is 1, which is also correct. And let's do a quick check on the serial numbers, which is correct as well. So that's the one that we're now getting back into the warehouse. So I'm going to do, again, a quick check, make sure everything is okay. Seems to be. So let's do a post. And we have also a material document generated. And if we then look at the accounting document that was generated here, we can also see that the refurbished part that we've just received into stock now has inherited that $450 US dollar value, which is what we had in the purchase order. So again, this also indicative that the refurbished valuation type is moving average price managed. And if we look at the stock overview once again, we indeed see that the supplier stock now has been erased from the screen because the supplier no longer has the damaged part, and we now have 2 refurbished parts into our warehouse. And lastly, if we once again go and look at the history of that serial number, we can see that we continue to have the entire history. So we can clearly see that we had received the item at some point. We can even navigate to the original purchase order if that is what we want to do. We have the entire history of the transfers, the movement from our warehouse to the supplier, the parts coming back. So we have the entire history, which is obviously very important in this particular process. We also have information pertaining to the current state of that serial number / equipment. We can see that it is standing in the valuation type / batch of refurb. And from an equipment point of view, the status, we can see that it is ESTO, signifying that it is currently in the warehouse. So this concludes the functional process on how to perform the MRO subcontracting process in SAP S/4HANA Public Cloud. Now, as I said, I also want to quickly highlight the key items that we needed to set up in order to put this process in place. So let's go and look at the material first, the product master. And what is important in that part, if we go all the way down to valuation areas, we will see that we have here the valuation types that are indicated. So you might be familiar with having possibly one valuation type for a particular product, but in this case we have what's called a split valuation. So we have a material that is split valuated according to a valuation type of damaged, new, or refurb. As I said, some customers might only want to have new and damaged or new and refurb. You could potentially have one, two, however many more valuation types you want. It really is up to you to decide how you want to set this up. Another thing that is also important is the valuation category, which in this case is G, as we will see in the next step when we go to manage your solution to see the configuration that was required to set this up. So let's go and look at the manage your solution app. Now, in your configuration environment, whether you are using CBC or manage your solution, there are two steps that you need to look into to complete the setting up from a configuration point of view. So you'll find these two in the material valuation and account assignment group. And to be more specific, these are the two entries that we want to really look into. So activate split valuation for global data. You also have the ID here, which you could use to search in CBC or even in manage your solution. And you also have this ID for this particular entry, which is going to be the activation of split valuation for the valuation area. Now, the help documentation is very good and quite clear on what you need to do. So let's have a quick look. First, number 3, you need to define this at the global level. So let's go ahead and configure this. And as you can see here, we are finding those valuation types that we had in our material. So here we have created damaged, new, refurb. There are also certain settings that you can indicate whether you are going to be leveraging these valuation types in an external process, so leveraging purchase orders or leveraging production orders. So it could be that you are also going to be handling production orders to carry out this refurbishment in-house. It doesn't have to be with a supplier. So once you've created your valuation types, the next step is to look at the global valuation categories, which is what you will enter in your product master. And that is going to condition which valuation types you will then get to see. If you recall, on our particular product master, we had the valuation type category G, which is this one here, which I've used in this case. And if we select it, we can go down to the assigned valuation types, and we find once again those 3 valuation types that we had created as a global here that are going to be used in our product master. So this is the setting that you need to do from a global level. And you also need to do something similar at the valuation area level, which is the step number 4, activate split valuation for valuation area. So let's go ahead and configure that one to see what that looks like. And obviously the valuation area in this case is going to be your plant. So I was using 1710. If I select it, once again, I can at the local level see those valuation types, and you will only be able to see those if you've already entered them in the global types. And then once again, for my valuation area 1710, the valuation category G, we should at the local level find those valuation types of damaged, new, and refurb appearing here as well. So that's pretty much it from a configuration point of view. There are certain other settings that you might also want to look at with regards to the serial number management. In the serial number profile, there's a setting that you can also set to make sure that the stock movements that you'll be doing on that serial number are going to be coherent, because you obviously want to make sure that there is a perfect synchronization in terms of the life cycle of that particular serial number with regards to how it is progressing in terms of goods issues, receipts, transfers, and so on in your warehouse. You want to make sure that there is a stock, a check that is being done to make sure that the movement is coherent. So that's pretty much it. So I hope that this has provided you some insights into how you can carry out the MRO subcontracting process in SAP S/4HANA Public Cloud. Until next time, stay safe.